Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am B Don, joined by the one, the only Fantasy Master Lothario. Gray Albright. Let's
If
go.
you like fantasy sports and sarcasm, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see I'm wearing the shirt for the theme song. I'm wearing the theme song shirt of the podcast that you're listening to. Not a commercial.
But if you want to go buy it, you can.
If you want to buy it, you can, but not a commercial. Actually, it's up to you. I'm not pushing that. You should though. You should buy the Razzball tools though. Those can help your. I'm such a terrible salesman. I am literally. I think because like my dad was a salesman, so I feel like because I grew up with that, I am like I rebelled by being the worst salesman of all time. People should.
That's a bold strategy of being really bad at like the one thing that every job actually has.
Yeah. Well, that's how you end up a fantasy baseball blogger, B-Don. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, people either believe you if they don't. There's not much to sell on that front, I guess. Maybe I should take over the reins.
People were
sales, though.
People are like, "Oh, you're a screenwriter." It's like, "Oh yeah." Well, like number one thing I think with screenwriting is you really have to sell yourself. It's like, well, maybe I'll try fantasy baseball blogging.
Yeah, everything is a sales job, Gray. Everything is a sales job. And if it's not a sales job, it's probably in sports. But hey, let's get over into it, Gray. We're gonna go like 2.5 hours and cover 20 pitchers, so we might as well jump into it. Number 42, which starts, I believe, the 8th tier for us, is Seth Lugo. Last year had 206 innings. 16-9 record, a 3 ERA, a 109 whip, 181 strikeouts, 21.7% K rate, 5.7% walk rate. You have him down for a 13-9 record, 3.43 ERA, 112 whip, 171 strikeouts, and 192 innings. I mean, I never thought the day would come when we would see Seth Lugo throw 200 innings. I mean, it was pretty good. He struggled in July, August, which if you recall from Pitchers Part 1, there was a lot of pitchers who struggled in July and August last year, and pretty much every year. But other than that, he was really good. I mean, a 3 ERA, he couldn't have struggled that bad in August because the numbers would be worse. But can he repeat the innings? I feel like that's the biggest question, Gray, because he's always been pretty solid when he's actually on the field.
Yeah, no, I like Seth Lugo. I think Seth Lugo, like I've looked at a lot of fantasy baseball teams in the comments with the old hey, could you look at my team and tell me what you think? I've looked at a lot of them, and I don't think I've seen Seth Lugo once, which is a little surprising because he was the 6th best starting pitcher on the player rater last year. So he was the 6th best starting pitcher. And he's going, I don't have the ADP in front of me, but I want to say he's going roughly around 175 overall. Like he's going really late. And he was between Shota and Dylan Cease on the player rater for starting pitching. Better than Paul Skeens, Corbin Burns, Bryce Miller, Framber Valdez. Well, you get the picture. He was better than a lot of guys because he was the 6th best starter. So you would say, okay, but fluky, right? I mean, fluky, yeah. Well, the thing is, he has a 3.38 ERA for his career in almost 850 innings. I get it. He's not a big strikeout guy, but he also has amazingly good command. He has a 1.15 whip for his career. The K's won't be there, but again, like you said it, over 200 innings last year, 200 innings on a probably a better than 500 Royals team is going to lead to wins. He's in a great park. Kauffman Stadium is a good park. The ratios will be there. He's easy money in drafts, which I just don't see, people getting anywhere near as excited for him as they should be. And I get it. There's no strikeouts, so it's hard to get super excited. But he's been this guy for his whole career. Granted, some of that was in the bullpen. He wasn't always a starter. The Mets dragged their feet. He's 35 years old, even though he only has 850 innings in his career. But I mean, he has been really good for ratios his whole career, and with his command, I don't see that ending. So I feel like a lot more people should be excited for Seth Lugo than probably are. And, a lot of people have already drafted. So if you have drafted already, you take someone like, a hot name of the moment, like say, I don't know, Casey Mize, you throw him in with another hot bat or something of the moment, like someone like Victor Scott II, you throw those two guys together and maybe you get Seth Lugo and it's like, oh, wow, like I'm getting two sexy names for the price of Seth Lugo. Wow, that's great. And it's like, yeah, Seth Lugo is really good. I have no problems drafting Seth Lugo anywhere. I like him. He's a good innings guy and good ratios.
Yeah, absolutely. The whip has been high at different times in his career. I don't really know what to say about that. It kind of happens when you're not a huge K guy. And I will say in his career, he has had higher strikeout rates. Now at 35, I don't know if I expect that to go up, but there is some room for him to show a little bit more. Again, if he stays healthy, I am more than happy to have Seth Lugo on my teams. And at his ADP, it's not even really a gamble because he's put up 350 innings, 352 innings the last 2 years. So the early in career where he was, a reliever or back and forth or injured, like those innings are different than what he's doing now. So absolutely in with you on Seth Lugo, and he's going significantly later than this. 177 over the last couple of weeks over on NFBC. Which was like 66th among pitchers. Number 43, Reynaldo Lopez. Last year had 135 and 2/3 innings, 8.5 record, 1.99 ERA, 1.11 WHIP, 148 strikeouts, 27.3% K rate, 7.7% walk rate. You have him projected for an 11.9 record, 3.61 ERA, 1.15 WHIP, 177 strikeouts, and 164 innings. And again, it's a guy that I never thought we'd see innings from, but he went back to a starter and was actually great. I don't know if he can stay healthy as a starter and give that to us for 200 innings, but we just got done talking about a guy that I didn't think could do it. So I'm not going to rule it out.
So, with Reynaldo Lopez, also similar to Seth Lugo in that his ADP is dramatically lower than his fantasy value was for last year. So on the player rater last year, he was around a top 25 starter. As you mentioned, 1.99 ERA. I mean, just insane numbers. If he would have had more wins, he would have been, obviously he would have been like a top 5 to 10 starter. I mean, it was just like a crazy year last year that the Braves seemed to just generate out of thin air from one starter every year. Last year was Reynaldo Lopez. This is a trend that we saw start with Touki Toussaint, as we know. I think, and this year it's going to be AJ Smith-Shawver, obviously. But anyway, I think with Reynaldo Lopez, unlike Seth Lugo, I like Reynaldo Lopez for the price. At ADP 185, I'm totally in on it. I'm fine with it. I'll draft him. I like him. I will say, though, his velocity was down last year from the previous year. Obviously, that's from bullpen to starter. So not exactly apples to apples, but still his velocity was down last year. If he loses any more velocity after that jump in innings this year, I mean, he's looked pretty bad in spring training. It's just spring training. So, take that with a grain of salt. but he has thrown 13 innings and has a 3.5 K per nine, which is when your K per nine sounds like what you want your ERA to be, not a great sign, but it's fine. I mean, I think, with spring training, you take it with a grain of salt. So I like Reynaldo Lopez. I would draft him because the price is good. I have a little bit more concern about him than Seth Lugo, but still, I mean, price isn't bad for a guy who absolutely looked great last year.
Yeah, he did. I mean, we're talking about Reynaldo. It's can he make the same kind of innings jump that we saw from Lugo, going from reliever to starter, which is in that 130, 140 range, and then obviously Lugo jumped to 200. Can Reynaldo do that? And as you mentioned, can he maintain the velocity and the stuff while doing it? There's not been a good spring. Velocity's been down a little bit. It's very early. He went from 98, 99 type of guy to 95, 96 as a starter. That's fine. I think there's always been kind of a line at 93 where that's kind of where it becomes problematic. So yes, if you can't get back above like 93, 94, back up to the 95, 96, then yeah, it could be a 1-year thing for Reynaldo. He might go back to the bullpen, but we will see. I think both of us still like him. Had 165 innings, 10-9 record, 3.59 ERA, 1.15 WHIP, 134 strikeouts. That's a 19.6% K rate, 3.5% walk rate. You project for a 12-9 record, 3.64 ERA, 1.09 WHIP, 164 strikeouts, and 171 innings. We all kind of expected a drop off after his really great 2023. He did drop off, but it wasn't that bad. Ks were down. The whip wasn't elite like we saw it in 23, but he was still a very good pitcher. Velocity was down a little, and it's down a little bit here in spring training, unfortunately. But again, we'll see what that really does. Some of the radars out there aren't great either, so I'm not reading a whole lot of velocity. But what are your thoughts here, Gray?
So I mentioned this in the rankings, that this is around the point where I realize that there's so many starters to draft. Like if you were to punt starting to this tier, you could probably still find. I mean, you might have to draft starters for the next 5 rounds, but you could probably still find enough starting pitching even at this point. Eflin, I am a little bit concerned about the velocity being down in the spring. Might not be anything. I mean, it's such a small sample size. And, that's like sometimes when a guy is like, his velocity is down in spring, he's saving, I mean, that's a smart thing in a lot of cases, because then it's like, okay, he's not throwing as hard as he can in spring and injuring himself. He's trying to, build up his strength going into the season. So I'm not 100%, like, I'm not like fully concerned about it. I would absolutely draft Zach Eflin. Also in the rankings, I mentioned how he looks like Seth Lugo, like going into last year, just like another, just like great ratio guy. He's been solid ratios now for 2 straight seasons, 3.59, as you mentioned, 3.50 the year before, and 177 and 2/3 inning. So if you get 175 innings of 3.5 ERA, I mean, I get it. You may not get the strikeouts, but like also your league counts ERA, doesn't it? Your league counts WHIP, So it's like these guys are just so ridiculously affordable in drafts. I'm absolutely in. Zach Eflin, another one. He's going currently around 200 overall. So yeah, that's basically free. I mean, it's free money. So yeah, I'm in on Zach Eflin too, or Zeflin.
Yep, Zeppelin 1 through 4. Just classics. So many great hits from those albums, Gray. But yeah, I like Zach Eflin as well. And as you say, like some of these guys are not they're not as fun as the guys we talked about in 1 through 40. They don't have ratios plus insane K rates. And some of these guys don't have K rate upside at this point, but that doesn't mean they're not useful. And in reality, sometimes especially when we get later in pitching, taking nice ratios is better than chasing high Ks because we talked about this last show. At the end of the season, you can go chase down more Ks. You can't chase down ratios at the end of the season. So, especially when you're talking about back end starters, a couple points in K isn't the worst thing to happen if you're back in this area. Number 45, Nathan Eovaldi, 170 and 2/3 innings, 12-8 record, 3.80 ERA, 1.11 WHIP, 166 strikeouts, 23.9% K rate, 6% walk rate. You have him down for a 12-9 record, 3.71 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, 162 strikeouts, and 167 innings. He had a good first half, not so much to end the season. First half, he was a 2.97, 104. Second half, 4.81, 119. Just kind of a not great way to end the season, but he always kind of ends up in the same place one way or the other.
Yeah, and also, I think there's something to be said about if a guy's good in the first half and then tires out, then just drop him. So don't keep him around. It's like in most leagues, especially like in a 12-team mixed league, if you have a guy that's an under 3 ERA in the first half and then has a 4.5 plus ERA in the second half, it's like, why in a 12-team league, why did you hold on to him? You should have dropped him. Drop him after 2 bad starts, So another Eovaldi's solid enough Ks, nice command, always has a good ERA under a 3.9 going back till 2020. Yeah, I mean his ratios have been great for 5 years now. His whip has been also very good. Yeah, I mean it's just and he throws 175 innings ish. Obviously it's give or take depending on injuries, but it's if you can get these guys at at a certain point, I understand they're not the most exciting names, but if you can get a guy who's throwing 175 innings of a 3.7 ERA, assuming you're in a league good enough where you can figure out when to bench a guy, assuming even Eovaldi, as you mentioned, the second half, if you just dropped him in the second half and you got a 3.3 ERA or whatever it was in the first half plus maybe a couple starts before you realize he was completely cooked, there's no reason why you can't carry that in any league. Not every guy on your staff needs to be just Tyler Glasnow with a 12 plus K per 9 or even the sexy name du jour of Tyler McGill. It's okay, yeah, great. He's gonna be a sexy name that you can pick up off of waivers, but you need guys like Eovaldi who are gonna throw those innings. So yeah, again, I like Eovaldi. I've drafted him in plenty of leagues this year. His price is, I don't have the ADPs in front of me, but I'm sure his price is relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, he's going after 200 right now. I mean, that's as cheap as you can ask for about somebody that's going to give you, like you said, 150, 170 innings of solid ratios and really a K rate that's not going to kill you. It's not like a negative. He's not striking out 12%, of people. It's very solid. And I mean, when we're talking game to game, start to start, Paul Skeens is going to have some starts where he gets 3 strikeouts. Eovaldi is going to have some where he has 10. That's just the way it goes. So game to game, like I know at the end of the season it's different, but game to game it can be whatever. So again, these guys are worth rostering. If they're not worth rostering in your league, they're definitely worth picking up and streaming, depending on the depth of your league. So just keep that in mind. You don't need a 27% K rate guy to start for you every single time. It's not even feasible, honestly. Number 46, Ranger Suarez, 150 innings last year, 12-8 record, 3.46 ERA, 1.2 WHIP, 145 strikeouts, 23.2% K rate, 6.5% walk rate. You have him down for a 12-8 record, 3.56 ERA, 1.24 WHIP, 154 strikeouts, and 162 innings. Speaking of, you don't need a whole bunch of strikeouts to be worthwhile. Ranger Suarez in the first half was terrific. If he wasn't the number one starting pitcher at the All-Star break, he was top 5 at least. Had a hand and a back issue in the second half of the season. Velocity dipped after those injuries, and he's going to start the season on IL dealing with a back issue, which isn't great. Seems like it's a little bit of carryover from last year. But Ranger Suarez, again, proved kind of the strikeout point last year. What do you think, Gray? Because again, before he was injured, he was really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I rode Ranger Suarez for a good portion of like the first 3 months of the season in a lot of leagues. Again, he's also very inexpensive in drafts. Like this year, I don't know. He's probably after 200. Right now, he's after 300 since the back thing flared up. I really don't have a problem with it. I mean, in most leagues, you draft him at where he's going or whatever. You put him on the IL, and then if he comes back and he doesn't look good, you just drop him, move on to someone else. You don't need to have your team completely locked in from the jump until the end of September. You can work with waivers and how guys are going. Ranger Suarez was so good in the first half last year. I have him ranked pretty high. Admittedly, a lot of that was before the back injury, or at least the back issue flared up again. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm fine with him though. I've drafted him as well. I think I drafted him in Tout Wars. I've drafted him in other leagues. We'll see how it goes. I'm really he's got a long track record of being worthwhile. So I feel like he can figure it out, and I'm not so worried about the back injury. In his career, he has a 3.42 ERA. And that's for his career. So he's had a solid ratio now for almost it looks like over 600 innings of his career. So yeah, I'm in. I like him. I don't necessarily look for, if people are worried about the strikeouts not being there for some of these guys, Ranger Suarez is in the same camp as a Seth Lugo and a Nathan Eovaldi. And if you're worried about the strikeouts, then, pick up a Jeremiah Estrada or something. Pick up a reliever who can help add some strikeouts to your bottom line or whatever. I feel like Ranger Suarez you can make Ranger Suarez work in any league. The fact that he's going after 300 overall as of the last week and a half, it does have a lot to do with that injury, but still, that's crazy. I mean, he's so rock solid for going back 4 years now.
Yeah, I mean, he's been really solid. Again, he's a little bit injured, so there's going to be some draft value there. If you have an IL spot, I think he's worthy of one. Maybe if you only have one, he's not the guy, but if you have multiple IL spots, absolutely. I have no problem throwing some of these guys into that IL spot. Like I said, was one of the top 3 pitchers at the All-Star break last year, and gets no love. He gets no respect. He just gets the Rodney Dangerfield treatment. All right, so let's start the next tier here, Gray. Number 47, Robbie Ray. He only threw 30 innings last year, but you have him projected for 9-12 record, 3.87 ERA, 1.23 WHIP, 187 strikeouts and 163 innings. He's been good this spring. Finally, one of the guys that we're talking about that's been good this spring. Velocity's down maybe a tick from his like peak year of 2021, but he's kind of sat at 94 since then anyway. So pretty much where he's been, despite a few different little injuries here and there.
Yeah, no, I actually, Robbie Ray's the first pitcher where I feel like I drafted him early in leagues, and he's the first one where I feel like he's really moved up in ADP in the last 2 to 3 weeks. Like as you mentioned, spring training, he's looked great. So that has boosted the helium. I think he's going roughly around 120 overall now. That is from a average of 200 after 200 prior. That 125 overall is in the last week and a half of drafting. Prior to that, he was going after 200. So he's definitely moved up a lot. I feel like he's a guy who could come out and have a 160 plus innings of incredible strikeouts, really solid ratios. The wins are out of his control, but he could have a excellent bounce back year. I'm in on him because I saw the 30 innings last year and he looked fine. I'm not talking about his tight pants either, but it was in the back of my head. I thought of it, but he looked fine last year. So I'm in this year. I might regret that when we go over Spencer Strider, but I'm definitely, I was a lot more, I was less nervous about Robbie Ray just because of the innings that we saw last year and how good he looked. So I got in early on him, and I'm right now. In Tout Wars, I think I paid $10. I want to say $10 in a NL only league. Now he's probably going for over 20 in an NL only. I got him at a really good price. So, and that was only maybe 3 weeks ago, I think. So yeah, Robbie Ray's really he's one of those guys where I feel like the price has jumped up, and I would still be in on the price jump up. I'd be aggressive about getting Robbie Ray because I think he really could be in for one of those really excellent years that he's had in the past.
Yeah, I think I'm out on Robbie Ray given the new price. I was in when it was the old price. I have moved him up the rankings, but I don't think I've moved him up enough to get him. He's now going inside the top 130 overall, which feels expensive for a guy who's thrown less than 50 innings the last 2 seasons. I get that he looked good coming back, and he's looked good in spring training. That's great. I don't really trust it. I feel like people are I feel like the ADP is mostly based on the fact that he's one of the last K guys, real high K guys left on the board, not necessarily that people believe in him. And I'm not gonna chase the K's with Robbie Ray. I'm not gonna do it, Gray. But I completely understand because he does look good in it. The pants.
It's impossible. It's impossible not to think of the pants. I struggled. I know you did. It's fine.
Number 48, Christopher Sanchez. Last year had 181 and 2/3 innings, 11-9 record, 3.32 ERA, 1.24 WHIP, 153 strikeouts, 20.3% K rate, 5.8% walk rate. You have him down for a 12-8 record, 3.41 ERA, 1.21 WHIP, 161 strikeouts, and 183 innings. He is a popular sleeper. Seems to have picked up a little velocity this spring training. I think in order for him to get to where people think he can, we need to see either the WHIP get controlled or the K rate jump. Do you think he has one of those in him?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of like my Robbie Ray in that, like, I liked him a lot more before the ADP jump from the spring training. Velocity supposedly is higher, so everyone started getting in on him a little bit earlier. I don't know. I mean, that's also very specific leagues on NFBC. If you're in an ESPN or a Yahoo league and you still have a draft upcoming, Christopher Sanchez probably hasn't moved up too much in those leagues, and I would still get him. I like him a lot. I don't like him like you were saying with Robbie Ray. I don't like Christopher Sanchez when he's getting bumped up into like the top 100. I think that's a little crazy just based off of like, spring training. Again, it's like, I mean, I've said it so many times, but it's like spring training really doesn't mean anything. It's just like guys are just out there. Like, it's like if you're a hitter, you may just be like going out there and seeing like if you can, recognize a curve and laying off all fastballs or something. Like you're working on things. And on the other side of it with like pitchers, guys may be like, oh, I want to see if I can like, throw to the outside corner every time. It's like guys are not doing what they would normally do. They're not just trying to get hitters out, and hitters aren't just trying to hit the ball. Like they're actually doing things that are like, it's like a training exercise in a lot of these guys. So, but anyway, with that said, I do like Christopher Sanchez. I just don't like him at like, in the top 100. I mean, he's fine. I think I think he was like when he was at like 200 overall, say like, 3 weeks ago, I think that was kind of where I think his price should have been, because like he was, he's around in, a 7.5 to 8K per nine, good command, should be solid for ratios, but that's just a step below Seth Lugo, who is going, like now he's going like 75 picks after Christopher Sanchez, which is just nuts.
It is. And I mean, I like Christopher Sanchez too, but I've pretty much been priced out on him as well, Gray. So, if the breakout happens, it happens. And I think we're gonna miss out if it does. But I don't know that a tick on the radar gun is gonna help.
In March. Sorry.
Like, ultimately,
sorry, not to interrupt, but in March. I mean, it's a tick up in March.
I mean, it's a good time to see it, because that way maybe it carries through for the beginning, and you don't have to
for like
see a ramp up period. Like I'd rather see it now.
6 weeks, and then like I mean, it's nice to see it ever, sure, but it's still like you get to May or something, and it's like, oh yeah, well. He realized that he could only throw that fast for like a month, and then he's like, I'm not throwing that hard anymore. Otherwise my arm's gonna fall off, or his arm does fall off, like we see with like Grayson Rodriguez or some of these other guys. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. We'll see what happens. Spring training is also like 2-3 inning bursts as well, so keep all that in mind. Number 49, Nick Pivetta, 145 innings last year, 6-12 record, 4.14 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, 172 strikeouts, 28.9% K rate, 6.1% walk rate. You have him down for a 10-inning record, 4.03 ERA, 1.14 WHIP, 177 strikeouts, and 141 innings. I mean, I think Nick Pivetta at this point has just kind of settled into 145 solid innings of high K ball, and that's kind of what you just pencil him in for. And I think that goes underappreciated, given that not many people go more than 150 innings these days.
Yeah, no, completely. I think Nick Pivetta is like, he's like the polar opposite of a lot of these guys we're talking about. Like, it's like he's like the opposite of like a Seth Lugo. And like Nick Pivetta, ratios may not be the best, but his strikeouts should be insane. And, you do need strikeouts as well. So if that's like, it depends on how you put together your team. I think, Nick Pivetta is probably a guy who, you're going to get his stats. If you just put him in your lineup and you get his stats at the end of the year, you're going to be fine with it. from start to start, you're probably going to get an ulcer. You just put them on your fantasy team and then put like a little bit of duct tape over like his name. So you can't don't ever look at his stats, because he will give you an ulcer, and you're going to it could be a bleeding ulcer even. So just be careful. The New England medicine book of Bibles of medicine, or whatever it's called, is like, under Nick Pavetta, it says bleeding ulcer for fantasy. But with that said, though, if you're able to stomach it, pun, I do think he is worth this draft spot if you need strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely is worth, I think, the draft spot. I like him. A lot of times if I'm looking at ratio or a strikeout guy in this area, I mean, again, there's not many left, and I like Nick Pavetta. And I think there's actually some potential that he could improve on that ERA. He's actually gotten the whip under control the last couple of years. Walks have been down. I think the ERA can maybe get under control, leaving Boston, getting out of we've talked about how good it is for hitters. It's equally as bad for pitchers because of the same reasons. So I think actually just getting out of Boston, getting to a favorable pitchers stadium for the first time in his career could actually really help Nick Pavetta and get the ERA, get the home runs down. That's always been kind of the issue because he's more of a fly ball pitcher. And so you stick him in a fly ball stadium, it's not always great. Number 50, Ryan Pepiot. Last year had 130 innings, 8-8 record, 3.60 ERA, 1.15 whip, 142 strikeouts, which was a 26.3% K rate, had 8.9% walk rate. Young projected for a 9-11 record, 3.92 ERA, 1.19 whip, 172 strikeouts, 156 innings. I feel like I've said this about a few guys already, but when he's on the mound, he's been solid. If they were on the mound more often, they wouldn't be down here. So, but Ryan Pepiot, again, when he's healthy, Gray, when he's pitching, pretty solid.
Yeah, no, completely. I think he's, well, like you said, he's discounted because you're not sure how many innings you're going to get. But, it's like at this point, there's a caveat with every pitcher at this point. And his happens to be, will he be able to stay on the mound? And if he does, then you should be able to get good stats. Like there's no reason to think he won't be good. There is a little part of me, not a big part, but a little part of me is slightly worried about the stadium, and his homer per fly isn't necessarily the best. His homer per 9. So if he gives up a ton of fly balls in that stadium, does that hurt him a little bit more? I don't know. Again, there's issues with all these pitchers at this point. So there's that caveat. Maybe we we feel it out in the beginning of the season to see how that stadium plays in April for like a guy like Pepiot. But I do like him. I think I don't think he's completely unlocked as good as he can be either. I think there's actually upside for him, but it's a matter of staying on the field and the ball staying in the park.
Yeah, I think it's really just staying on the field. Home run fly ball hasn't been great, but yeah, I think if you're going to stay healthy, we'll get a good season out of him. Moving on to the next tier, number 51, Spencer Arrighetti, 145 innings last year, 7-13 record, 4.53 ERA, 1.41 whip, 171 strikeouts, 27.1% K rate, 10.3% walk rate. Year projected for an 11-9 record, 3.61 ERA, 1.32 whip, 204 strikeouts, and 172 innings. He has some hype on him as well. K rate was good last year. I feel like the hype is off of one good month and a good K rate, but you tell me if I'm wrong, Gray.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I do think, though, if a guy like, at his age, he's 25 now. He, last year, one good month as in his first full season of as in his rookie year, one good month. He builds off of that this year in his sophomore season, and I mean, you can see how you can see how it could easily become like a top 20 starter if he just needs that to keep building on his previous good month, I guess. I like him. I mean, he's not without his flaws. His command is a little wonky. He does have good strikeouts. I think his command was a little bit better in the minors, not at times, not necessarily all the time, at times. there is some command issues, but if he can strike out guys at roughly 11 K per nine, or even like where he was in like the second half of last year, like if there is potential here. I think the fact that he had 65 innings in the second half of last year and had a 3.18 ERA, it shouldn't go unnoticed for a guy who was in his rookie season. I mean, he was really good. So if his command was better in the second half too last year. So if he can build off of that, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a path here for major success.
Yeah, I mean that second half includes the 1 month where he was really good. Hence the 3.18. But yeah, I mean there's definitely a path to success here. I think it's mostly based on the walks. If he can get those down in the second half of last year, that's what he did better. He went from, I believe, like a 12 or 13% walk rate down to like an 8% walk rate. If he can get under 8 somehow for a season, then yeah, I mean I could see this step happening. I haven't really seen anything to say that that's necessarily going to happen. I think he was getting a little, I don't know. I wasn't overly impressed with Arrighetti last year in regards of the command. Obviously that was in and out. Hasn't been great this spring. 16 walks in 17 innings is not ideal. But as you mentioned, when you're looking for upside, you're going to have to take some kind of risk at this point. Because nobody down here is perfect. Number 52, Shane Baz. Last year had 79 innings, 4-3 record, 3.06 ERA, 106 WHIP, 69 strikeouts, which was a 21.6% K rate, 8.5% walk rate. You have him down for a 7.8 record, 3.86 ERA, 1.26 WHIP, 138 strikeouts, and 146 innings. He's one who has struggled this spring. Velocity seems fine at least. But we've never seen him for a lot of innings, Gray.
No, he's also, I think, he did have, again, the Rays may get eaten up in Big Stein Stadium. I mean, last year it wasn't bad for homers allowed, but he doesn't necessarily keep the ball on the ground. There was a decent amount of fly balls, so. But again, I mean, everyone's got, caveats. So I don't mind the flyer. I think it depends on if he's there at the right price, really. Like there's definitely there's a large, he's going, there's a giant conglomerate, not the right word, of starters going after 200 overall. He's going after 200 overall. So he's a flyer that you take as probably depending on the size of the league, but roughly say a 4th to 5th starter. Yeah, and you see what you get. You have to have the right pitching staff in order to take him, Shane Baz, Shane Baz. You have to have the right pitching staff, because if you have all upside risky starters, if you have Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow in front of him, you may not get 200 total innings from 3 starters on your team. So that's not going to work. But if you have other guys on your team where if you have a Seth Lugo, for instance, and you're getting 175 innings of good ratios, then you take a Shane Baz, after 200 overall. It's like you got to balance out the risk and how many innings you have on your from your starters. But I do like him. I don't think we've come anywhere close to actually seeing what he can do. He hasn't stayed on the field. He's going to be in that goofy stadium that I really don't know what to expect from some of these Rays starters in that goofy stadium. I do wonder if they might not be as good as they were when they were in that terrible Tropicana. Because Tropicana, as awful as that stadium was, it was also it was awful, but it was good for pitchers. Whereas I don't think Steinbrenner Field is going to be good for pitchers. But it's he's a decent enough flyer where you're getting him.
When we're talking about the Tampa Bay guys, I mean, you got to kind of just pick your poison at some point. I mean, there's a lot of question marks in the Tampa Bay rotation. One of those guys being the next guy up here, number 53, Taj Bradley. Last year had 138 innings, 8-11 record, 4.11 ERA, 1.22 WHIP, 153 strikeouts, which was a 26.6% K rate. He had an 8.1% walk rate. You have him down for a 10-10 record, 3.89 ERA, 1.19 WHIP, 170 strikeouts, and 162 innings. He had a absolutely horrendous 8-start stretch from the end of July to early September. But hey, outside of that, Gray, he was really good.
Yeah. I mean, he was as good as terrible as he was in the second half. He was that good in the first half. There was that. So, I mean, I don't know what again, it's like with the Rays, especially, I don't know what we're getting from any of the Rays starters. I don't mind them. I don't mind the Flyers. This is a tier of pitchers where I would draft them. But these guys, there's a reason why, Taj Bradley is at is in the late 50s for start. Well, excuse me, he's at 53. He's my 53rd starter. But there's a reason why he's not in the top 20 for me for starters. I mean, there was moments last year where it was like he looked like everything you wanted, with the 10 plus K per 9, the barely 3 walk rate, like he unlocked something in the first half that looked really good. But then he I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, he lost it completely from July to September. So yeah, August was not a good month for him. If you put aside August, it's actually, I shouldn't even mention July. July, he had a 1.45 ERA in July. It was August, really. He had one terrible month, which is I mean, he's young ish. I mean, he's young for he's what, in his third year. He's going into that magical third year. I mean, there's a chance here he could be a top 20 starter. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. If the price is decent enough, go for it. I have no problem drafting him. I would not be reaching necessarily. I would, if it's where's he going right now? He's going around 200 overall. So that's fine. 200 overall is a decent enough price. I wouldn't be in at 130, but at 200, sure.
Yeah, great. I like Taj Bradley. I think that there's, still a lot of upside, as you mentioned at the break. It seemed like we had, a new top 20 starting pitcher to join the ranks. So we've seen he has the capability. He has strikeouts. Again, I don't know what happened in that 8-start stretch. I've looked through the numbers. There's nothing that really stands out. So just, hope that was just a bad stretch and he's figured things out. Number 54, Bowden Francis. Last year in 103 innings, he went 8-5 record, 3.30 ERA, 0.93 WHIP, 92 strikeouts, 22.5% K rate, 5.4% walk rate. You have him down for a 9-7 record, 3.79 ERA, 1.11 WHIP, 132 strikeouts, and 143 innings. Not many people go from bad reliever to good starter in that order, Gray, but that's what Bowden did last year. He had a 2.92 ERA as a starter versus a 4.39 ERA as a reliever, 25% K rate and a 4.5% walk rate as a starter versus 16% and 7.6% walk as a reliever. That those numbers don't make any sense to me, Gray. But this was so much better as a starter than a reliever.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's gonna be like basically like who is Bowden Francis after this year. We're gonna find out because I don't think we know necessarily. I think there's a lot of potential here for a guy who's really good with ratios, has insanely good command, or we get like to May and it's like, oh yeah, he really wasn't that good. I don't think we really know yet. There's potential here though. I think, there's every stop along the way. His command has looked excellent. His command looked excellent in the majors last year. So, I mean, if he can keep his walk rate like anywhere close to where it's been, it's like he shouldn't be that bad. So, I don't know like what we're going to get necessarily because there is such a small sample size. That's what, the walk rate has been so excellent that I think he's worth the draft pick where he's going, which is, I think he's going real late. I want to say like in the 230s or something. So yeah, I don't mind it. I wouldn't expect like, K's to bounce like, way up from where they were last year. I wouldn't expect more K's. I would hope that he was able to, replicate somewhat like what we saw from Seth Lugo. I think that's best case scenario, like 150 innings of good ratios. And maybe you get like, 11, 12 wins, and, maybe around an 8K per 9-ish, but that's assuming the command stays in order, which it should. I mean, that is sort of where that is sort of his game. So as long as that stays fine, I think he's going to be okay. Even if the spring training numbers look a little wonky.
Yeah, I mean, again, like we said with spring training, sometimes they're doing different things. I mean, it could be a bad omen and his season's going to collapse in on itself, but you never know. They could be doing any number of things, especially when guys kind of have a spot locked up, which you have to assume he does, given, again, how good he was last year as a starter. And I think, not getting the upside shot that is potentially there, given where his ADP is. And for those of you who play in head-to-head or weekly leagues, he does have SPARP eligibility, SPRP, so you can kind of use him in that way, and it's probably one of the, I would say, top 5 SPARPs out there and available. Moving on to the next tier, 55 is Kevin Gausman, 181 innings last year, 14-11 record, 3.83 ERA, 1.22 WHIP, 162 strikeouts, which is a 21.4% K rate with a 7.4% walk rate. You have project for a 12-9 record, 3.79 ERA, 1.24 WHIP, 157 strikeouts, and 171 innings. The splitter, which has been so good, got lit up last year. Less vertical drop, more horizontal run to it, and it is just not working. Velocity was down a little bit, 94 to 93. As I mentioned earlier, 93 is kind of that big marker where it starts to become a problem. And unfortunately, the velocity is down in spring training. I really wanted to think we were going to get more Kevin Gausman goodness because the splitter was nasty for a few years there, Gray. But I'm beginning to believe it's done.
Yeah, so this is a new tier, and this is pitchers I am not drafting. I'm actually surprised that so many people are still in on Kevin Gausman. I think after last year, like at 33 years old, what he did last year should be enough of a red flag where you should be out. Everyone should be out. I'm kind of surprised I'm the only one that seems to be out, because like at right now his ADP is, I think, at 150. So he's going probably a good 70 picks before I would draft him. I wouldn't ever draft him, but if it were a possibility, it would be much later than that. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it all. There's nothing for me really to add. At a certain point, guys just get old. It's okay. There's no there's no harm in that. It happens. It hasn't happened to me yet. Don't look at me to get old, okay? I don't want to hear any of that, but some people do. Some people get old.
Number 56, Grayson Rodriguez. Last year in 116 innings, he went 13-4, 3.86 ERA, 1.24 WHIP, 130 strikeouts, 26.5% K rate, 7.3% walk rate. You him down for a 10-7 record, 3.51 ERA, 1.14 WHIP, 139 strikeouts in 127 innings. He had a right shoulder inflammation issue early, and then a right lat strain that cost him, or in August, it cost him the rest of the season. Gray, you were Grayson Rodriguez's fanboy. What's going on?
Yeah, he burned me, man. You know what? It's upsetting to even talk about it, to be honest. It hurts a little bit. It still does. Even like this is like 2 weeks after his initial injury. It's still like, oh man, I had so many high hopes for him, man. I really did. I was in big time. He's one guy who actually, I think he's the one guy who's really burned me so far this draft season. Knock on wood, one guy's not bad. Last year I got burned by everyone. So no, that's not true. But I mean, I got burned by Grayson Rodriguez. Unfortunately, I mean, I don't know. It's velocity is it's the devil's toothbrush, whatever that means. it's not good. I mean, you throw 98, things are going to break down. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Yeah, hopefully, I don't know. The last I heard, he was already starting up a throwing program, and the Orioles are hoping he comes back. I don't know. I expect nothing but bad news going forward. I would not draft Grayson Rodriguez, and if I had him, I would even look to see if I could trade him off of some good news. But in the leagues I have Grayson Rodriguez, there ain't no trading, so it doesn't matter for me. But save yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, if you drafted before the injury, you're just kind of out of luck. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like he's going to be okay eventually, but it's sad because I know he burned you, Gray, but he was looking good before the injury. So I was hoping we would get a healthy Grayson Rodriguez season one of these days, Gray. One of these days. 57, Kodai Senga, he threw 5 1/3 innings last year. He dealt with calf and shoulder issues. You have him projected for a 9-4 record, 3.66 ERA, 1.26 WHIP, 139 strikeouts, and 124 innings. I mean, I believe the stuff is good, Gray. Hopefully he can stay on the field and pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're like I'm out on, like I said, not to repeat myself, but I'm out on everyone in this tier. I'm out on Kodai Senga as well. I guess if you draft him expecting 125 innings and you get that, they should be a good 125 innings. So, there might be some, something to that. That may not be the worst thing, I guess. He's going much higher than I have him ranked, though. I mean, he's going, I think, around like 150 overall. So I'm out on him, especially at that price. But yeah, I mean, he looks healthy right now. I don't know. We'll see. Shoulders and elbows and anything, any arm related injuries really scare me. So I hope he's healthy. I hope he can throw 125 innings. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't. I'm not in on him at his price.
Yeah, that's fair, Gray. I understand shoulder issues are not great. I still think there's a strong possibility he's going to be very good. Again, maybe not for a ton of innings, but it sounds like I like Singa more than you. Moving on to the next guy who threw 9 innings last year. So between these two, they threw less than 15 innings. But number 58 is Spencer Strider. The unprojected for 7-2 record, 3.44 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 162 strikeouts, and 126 innings. He got an internal brace surgery for his UCL. Reportedly, he could be up sometime in April. I'm actually a little surprised he didn't climb higher for you.
Yeah, I was, when I rank them, I rank these guys in January. Actually, I rank them in like November, December, and then I get the Patreon gets the rankings in December. So at the time I ranked Spencer Strider, I was completely out. I am getting some FOMO. I wish I kind of was in on Spencer Strider, like I was in on Robbie Ray. I should have been probably in on Spencer Strider because his price was really good early on, but live and learn. No one's without their flaws. Cast the first stone, man. Whatever other idiom / cliche you got. I don't know. Right now, Spencer Strider's going in the top 80 though, so I know I'm out on that price. I'm not in there. I'm not in when he's going roughly at the same price as Tyler Glasnow. But at the end of the day, they might actually throw the same amount of innings. So
yeah, I was just gonna say they might actually be very similar in production.
Yeah. I mean, Bryce Miller or Spencer Strider right now looks like the draft price for him. Unfortunately, when Spencer Strider was going at like 200 overall in like early drafts, that's when I really should have been in on him. At this point, it's like I don't know. There's no upside from that price, really. I think he's probably I have him down for 125 innings projected. I think everyone's projecting him for around 125 innings. So I mean, at 125 innings, yeah, they could be incredibly good 125 innings, but even at that, I mean, there's no one is really breaking 100 the top 75 overall in only 125 innings. It's going to be very hard. He could come close. I mean, there's possibility there. I mean, there's also, there's some downside, of course. Like he is coming back from a very serious injury. So yeah, I don't know. I should have been in earlier. Now, at this point, it's too late for me. Save yourselves.
Yeah, I was all in at the start of draft season, and then I was in, and then I was kind of in, and now like I don't know if I can actually get my level of enthusiasm up to where it needs to be. That being said, the statement you just mentioned about what can he do in 125 innings, I believe you said those exact words about Paul Skeens last year, and then he was a top 30 player overall for the season. So, and we had Strider as the number one pitcher going into last year. So, again, I don't want to underestimate what 130 elite innings can mean because it's there. But yes, I do feel like the injury part is starting to go out the window with each passing day. So
yeah, there's also like there's 125 innings. There's like he won't possibly back in April. I don't know. It's like with a pitcher especially, and you would assume the Braves are going to be playoff bound. At least you would assume that. Maybe he gets shut down in September. Maybe at like 100 innings, they start backing off of him because they want him for the playoffs. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of risk for a guy coming back from internal brace surgery on his UCL that is just like it's not baked into the price anymore. So yeah, I mean he could be a top 25 player because he's Spencer Strider, but yeah, I mean, I would prefer the Ronald Acuna Jr. not back until May top 25 player than the Spencer Strider not back until May top 25 player. Bet if there was such a thing.
if that happened to be out there. No, I mean, I agree with that part of it, but again, you get Strider significantly later still than you can get Ronald Acuna Jr. in a draft. Even with the news, I think Acuna is still going ahead of Strider. So, but yeah, the price is going up. If you want him, it's going to be inside the top 100. I think that's the price now, and maybe a little bit more. Number 59, Shane McClanahan. He didn't throw last year, and in 2023 he had 115 innings where he went 11-2, 3.29 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 121 strikeouts, which was a 25.8% K rate and an 8.7% walk rate. You have him down for an 8 full record, 3.37 ERA, 1.22 WHIP, 144 strikeouts and 137 innings. Tommy John in 2023, obviously dealing with inflamed nerve in his left tricep and will start on the IL. Those are not the words I wanted to hear from somebody who kind of like started to get on the McClanahan train there for a little while and has a few shares. I don't love the left arm inflammation.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, this is again, I was out on McClanahan prior to the inflamed nerve. I'm still out. Yeah, I think I feel like I don't want to put like any sort of like bad juju on any players, but the Shane McClanahan news is like the news you could get from any of these guys we're talking about. Like it's like these guys are all like held together by like a piece of string. Like it's really like, it's pitching is just so terrible for your arm. Like I know I'm not making like news here. I know everyone knows this, but it's just like you see these guys and it's like he just had Tommy John surgery, then he throws and it's like now he's got a nerve in his tricep issue. Like it's so difficult to be a major league pitcher. So any risk you can sort of avoid, you should try to do that. So I was out on him prior. I'm obviously still out. I wish him well, but I wouldn't be drafting him.
Yeah, again, if you have IL spots, I don't mind taking the shot and waiting for him to return. He has been very good when healthy, and he looked very good this spring before the injury. But yeah, right now, the draft cost is low because of in fact we don't know when he's coming back or if he's coming back, honestly. So we'll see what happens there. Number 60, Sandy Alcantara. Again, he didn't pitch last year. In 2023 he had 184 innings, 7.12 record, 4.14 ERA, 1.21 WHIP, 151 strikeouts. You have projected for an 8.9 record, 3.56 ERA, 107 WHIP, 128 strikeouts, and 141 innings. He is coming back from Tommy John. We saw him last in 2023, where the numbers had slipped from what he had shown us in the previous couple of seasons. But he has been good so far in spring training, which has moved his draft price up as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I wasn't paying attention to I knew he was doing well in spring training, but I didn't really look into the specifics. And now that I look at his stats from spring training, is he doing well? His numbers don't look that good. He's got
0 ERA and in 12 and thirds.
Let's put it. Yeah, I put aside the ERA, like the strikeouts and walks look like they're on par with his last year.
He does. Yeah.
His last year when he was like, he's fine. But his last year, he had a 4.14 ERA in 184 and 2/3 innings with a 7.4 K per nine. I don't know. I feel like he might be a little bit overrated because of that one really insanely huge year he had, because we haven't really seen that. He's been fine. He's sort of like, again, he's like an 8 K per nine good command guy, like really solid command. But if the Ks aren't that high, if the Ks are below an 8K per 9, or or rather the on the other side of it, if the walks are just a little bit up, I mean, he could not look so great. He's also, I mean, he's going to be pitching for the Yankees in July, so we'll see how he does once he moves to the AL East. Or wherever he moves, or if he moves to the NL West with the Dodgers. I mean, there's only like 3 teams potentially that could trade for him, but I would assume it's going to be one of those. So we'll see. I mean, he looks, I don't know. I'm not drafting him, especially not at his price. But I'm out on him. I think he's fine. I don't know. His numbers don't jump out off the page at me to be like, wow, this is great. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, even when he was going well, it was like Logan Webb was kind of what you were looking at, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Like Logan Webb is good. You draft him for the consistency, the innings, the good ratios, and that's fine. But with Alcantara, I'm not sure that the ratios are coming back. They may. Again, he's looked very good this spring training, but the ratios are really all we're asking of him. I guess last year was not great though. So I understand your point as well, Gray. I don't love Alcantara either. I don't really find myself getting him in drafts, but I don't mind him either. He's fine. An innings eater with injury concerns isn't necessarily my prime target usually.
Yeah.
Number 61, Yusei Kikuchi. This was a young starting pitcher signing for the Angels, I think, at 34 years old. 175 innings last year, 9-10 record, 4.05 ERA, 1.2 WHIP, 206 strikeouts, 28% K rate, 6% walk rate. You him down for a 9-10 record, 4.13 ERA, 1.22 WHIP, 186 strikeouts and 167 innings. Much better in Houston than he was in Toronto. In Toronto, he had 115 innings of 4.75, 1.34 ball. In Houston, he had 60 innings of 2.70, 0.93. For what it's worth, he's been good in spring training. I mean, it was like 2 different pitchers last year, Gray.
Yeah, when I was in New York for Tout Wars, I was talking to a scout, and I was talking to them about like which teams they trust with pitching, and the Angels and the Rockies were their least trustworthy organizations. But with that said, they did actually mention that Kikuchi, because he's a vet, they don't think the Angels are really going to affect him like in a large way, in a big way, either way, because he knows what to do at this point. With that said,
why they signed all the old people, Greg, because they won't listen to anybody anyways. So
yeah.
their terrible coaching won't actually matter.
Yeah, they're like, hey, Tim Anderson, he's going to be great for not listening. he's perfect.
Yusei Kikuchi doesn't even understand the language. This is awesome. Let's go.
This is amazing. Hey, guy doesn't speak English. You can't get better than that with the Angels. That's probably why Ohtani came into the league and did so well with the Angels. It was like, I don't know. If he's talking about DraftKings, who knows? Anyway, I'm not really drafting Kikuchi either, because like I didn't like what he was doing in Toronto, and I don't trust the Angels at all. I feel like the Astros are like the polar opposite of the Angels, where the Astros really can unlock something in a pitcher and a hitter for that matter. The Astros are really good about that, where the Angels are really bad. So if Kikuchi gets a little bit off of where he should be, there's no one there to fix it. So I don't want to mess with Kikuchi. I mean, good luck to him. I think he's actually, I think ADP wise, his draft price wasn't terrible. I mean, he wasn't one of the worst offenders of like being overpriced, but he was, above like 170 overall. So I mean, it's not great. I don't think I wasn't in on it though either way, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't mind him if he's the in that grouping of pitchers that goes in that area and he's around. I don't mind it. If I did draft a Logan Webb and I do need some strikeouts, a Kikuchi isn't the worst thing to add because there is still some ratio upside here. Yeah, if Toronto and Los Angeles are similar in their coaching strategies, though, we may get bad Kikuchi again. He may have to get shipped out somewhere else. But I think that's the Angels, solution for everything in the roster right now is to ship it out at some point this season. So that may happen. Number 62, which starts a new tier for us, is Ronald Blanco. 167 innings last year, 13-6 record, 2.8 ERA, 109 WHIP, 166 strikeouts, 24.6% K rate, 10.1% walk rate. Young down for an 11-9 record, 3.77 ERA, 1.31 WHIP, 170 strikeouts, and 171 innings. Stop me if you've heard this, Gray. He struggled in July and August.
Yeah.
Got hit with that comebacker in spring training, so I haven't heard whether he's going to be ready or not.
Yeah, I think last I heard he's gonna be okay, but yeah, I don't know. People should check the news on that. Yeah, I actually I found him to be one of those guys where I was really not in on him at all last year, and now this year, taking a step back and looking at his numbers, it looks decent. I mean, not amazing. Obviously, we're past the top 60th starter. So it's like everyone's going to have some issues here, but he looks okay for what he is. I don't mind it as he's going around like a 5th or 6th starter in 12-team leagues, probably around a 5th starter, 4th or 5th in 15-team, maybe 5th. Yeah, I mean, as long as he's able to continue what he was doing last year with his keeping the ball down, I don't mind it really, but it's it's a back end starter for sure. I don't think there's not a ton of K upside or anything. He's got to work on his command a little bit, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, for what it's worth, for his ADP versus play rater value, I mean, he's got to be one of the better ones if we're just doing that comparison, Gray, because he's going 250 off the board. Last year on the player rater, he was 52nd. So, I mean, it's nothing sexy, and I do believe there's a lot of luck. The numbers all say it. Sierra has him at a 4.17. Bip has him at a 4.15. He had a 2.20 BABIP with an 85% left on base. That all says he was very lucky. I don't expect him to be a 2.8 ERA guy. I do think he can be solid though. There was a pitch mix change where he threw the changeup more last year, and I think that's what led to some of the better results. Again, I don't think he's a 2.8 ERA guy, but I don't think he's necessarily ballooning back up to a 4.5 ERA guy either. So it sounds like I like him a little bit more than you, but neither of us necessarily, going to plant a flag on Ronald Blanco as our guy. Number 63, Jesus Luzardo. Last year had 66 innings, 3-6 record, 5 ERA, 1.25 WHIP, 58 strikeouts, 21% K rate, 8% walk rate. Young down for an 11-8 record, 3.76 ERA, 1.26 WHIP, 154 strikeouts, and 148 innings. Started the season with elbow tightness, then dealt with a back issue. Velocity was down after returning from a couple of injuries. Never really got it going. This one, I assume this one hurt us both quite a bit last year, Gray.
Yeah, I actually with Jesus Luzardo, I must have blocked out the pain from last year because I went back. I go back to look at my rankings for last year just to see like what guys were, projected or not projected, but ranked really high that ended up not doing as well. And I had forgotten how high I was on Luzardo last year. I was really high. I was really, really, really high on him. It's like you mentioned the elbow tightness. That's sort of, and then the back issue that sort of throws everything out because of the injuries. So I don't know. Maybe hopefully he's back. I think he is. I think his velocity is good. His velocity has been good. I think in spring training, at least his stats look pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't mind him. I think he's going at a reasonable price. I could see getting back in on him because it was like last year this time where I think I at least I thought he was a top 20 starter. I believe most people did, but I know I did.
No, I mean, he was going at least top 30 starter. I also liked him quite a bit. I was just waiting for the whip to get under control, and he'd shown that, in the previous season. So there's all the pieces to Luzardo to be good. I think last year was very injury riddled and just never really was on track. I'm kind of giving him a slight pass. I guess I'm not giving a full pass because I definitely didn't rank him where I ranked him the season before. But I don't mind getting back in on Jesus Luzardo. I think the talent is still very legitimate, and the stuff is very good. So moving on to number 64, Mackenzie Gore, 166 innings last year, 10-12 record, 3.90 ERA, 1.42 WHIP, 181 strikeouts, 25% K rate, 9% walk rate. You have him down for a 10-9 record, 3.78 ERA, 1.29 WHIP, 178 strikeouts, and 164 innings. Struggled in the middle of the season. He was good on the edges of it. It was just kind of a very, very up and down season for Mackenzie Gore, who we could still kind of wait for the full season breakout from.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit underrated this year. I think everyone expected the breakout last year or was anticipating a breakout. And then when it didn't happen, or it didn't happen to the extent that people were expecting, people got disappointed and they're now out on him this year. Whereas like last year, it was kind of like a step forward in a lot of ways. Like, his walks were down a little bit. His ERA was his ERA was under 4. I mean, he was, it was only his second full season in the majors. This year will be his third. He'll be, he's been a guy who's had a lot of like a good prospect pedigree in the past. Like people have really expected a lot from him. I think I'm still in. I like Mackenzie Gore. I think more than most people. I don't like. There's still issues, obviously. I mean, he's not. I don't have him ranked as a number 2 starter. I mean, he's a number 5 to number 6 for me. But I don't mind the. I've drafted him in a bunch of places, and I would, I like him. I would acquire him. I think he could still break out.
Yeah, I think he definitely can. I mean, we've seen him be very good in multiple stretches, Gray. I just need him to put it together for a full season and be good across the season. But yeah, I like Mackenzie Gore. I've always liked him. The stuff is good. And you can't always say that about some of the guys once we get down to this area. And I will say, if you're sitting there yelling at us about individual rankings and where they're at here, this section of pitcher, like this whole section of pitcher, SP2, part 2 of SPs, can kind of go in any number of ways depending on how deep your league is. What did you build off the front? Like, what are you looking for? They could all go rearranged. If you're looking purely upside, this list would be completely different.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's a good point actually to pause on for like a brief second. Like if you really like Mackenzie Gore, then draft him, 2 or 3 rounds before his ADP. If you don't like, whoever. I don't know. If you don't like
any of the Tampa Bay guys,
if you don't like Blanco or the Tampa Bay guys, then don't draft them. There's so many starters. All you need is 6 of these guys total between like the top 100 starters. So it's not like you have like if you don't like Kikuchi, don't draft them. That's all. It's very simple.
Yeah, don't back yourself into drafting a player you don't like. I mean, sometimes it'll work out, but if you don't like him, there's a reason. You've done the research. You're listening to us. Like you've done more than the base research. Like there's a reason you like and don't like guys. Why draft them unless if it's just beyond crazy ADP? I get it, I guess, but still, yeah. So ADP at this point. Grab your pitchers that you like that fit your build. Pitchers can go any ways. Like it's crazy. As we say year after year, Gray, you can find pitchers wherever. Number 65, Reese Olson, 112 innings last year, 4.8 record, 3.53 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 101 strikeouts, 21.7% K rate, 7.1% walk rate. The project for an 8.9 record, 3.71 ERA. 1.22 WHIP, 147 strikeouts, and 159 innings. Shoulder issue mid-year. He had some bad starts around that. K rate's not overly impressive, but still is managing to get a little bit of draft hype here, Gray. Do you like Reese Olson, or is this more, let the crowd grab him?
No, I don't mind Reese Olson. I think he's probably safer. Like there's a lot of noise right now for Casey Mize and Jackson Jobe, obviously for good reason on both of them. But I wouldn't be Reese Olson is the number 3 there. I wouldn't be surprised if Reese Olson is actually more valuable for fantasy than Mize or Jobe. I mean, there's a chance for them to be great, but there's also a lot of risk. Where with Reese Olson, and he's already done it. I mean, he's already had 112 innings, last year where he looked totally fine. I mean, it's not going to blow he's not blowing people away. It's going to be probably more dependent on like if he can go into deeper into games, get a few more innings. Like if he comes out with a 140 inning plus season with a 3.7 to 3.8 ERA. That's not bad. It is what it is, really. I mean, it's not like, that's not necessarily a pitcher that's going to win you leagues, but he could be very valuable for, where he's going and for what you need from him. Like, as long as you don't expect the world, he should be okay.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, Gray. I think it's a small group of people who've really pushed him up draft board. So hopefully you don't have those in your draft, because otherwise he's been in pretty good value at most of draft season. Number 66 is Tanner Houck. Last year he had his 178 innings, 9-10 record, 3.12 ERA, 1.14 WHIP, 154 strikeouts. That's a 20.7% K rate, 6.5% walk rate. You have him down for an 11-10 record, 3.68 ERA, 1.16 WHIP, 167 strikeouts, and 177 innings. Struggled in June and August. Other than that, he was good, Gray. I mean, it feels like Tanner Houck's kind of settling into what he is as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's also, I think, him and Crochet are the only 2 healthy Red Sox pitchers right now. I think he's totally fine. I mean, the fact that he threw almost 180 innings last year, I mean, that goes a long way to being, valuable for fantasy. If he can do that without, getting rung up terribly by with in ratios or something. And it did happen in 2023 for him, but that was also, I think, that's an unfair, that was his rookie year. It's unfair to really hold that against him. Last year was much better. He had a really solid ground ball rate. Like if he can keep his ground ball rate above 55%, he shouldn't have much problems with having like decent ratios. And if he can get 7.5 to 8.5 K per 9, that's basically all you want from like a starter in this range, which is like these are number 5 to number 6 starters, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. And anytime you can get somebody throwing more than 50% ground balls, it definitely should help limit the damage as well. So yeah, I like Tanner Houck. Number 67, Michael Wacha, 166 innings last year, 13-8 record, 3.35 ERA, 1.19 WHIP, 145 strikeouts, 21.2% K rate, 6.6% walk rate. You have him down for an 11-9 record, 3.58 ERA, 1.17 WHIP, 134 strikeouts, and 154 innings. You know, the WHIP isn't elite, the K rate isn't special, but Wacha's solid, and he's done it for the last 3 years. I mean, did have a finger issue in spring training last year and struggled to start the year, but then got it together. It's a guy nobody ever wants, Gray. I always end up with Michael Wacha, and I'm always fine with it.
Yeah, no, same. I feel like he's like a poor man Seth Lugo. It's just like,
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going to be exciting, but he also has had a 3.3 ish ERA for the last 3 seasons, and that's not in like partial seasons. I mean, you know, it's not like he's not throwing 200 innings necessarily, but last year he had 166 innings and a 3.35 ERA. I mean, that's what he does. It's like, you know, it's fine. It's not gonna. It's like you never look at a fantasy team and you're like scrolling down and looking for Michael Wacha and being like, oh yeah, that's the stuff. that's what I wanted to see. I mean, he's a solid number 5, number 6 fantasy starter. He's fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, Gray. He is what he is. There's not much upside, which is why he goes down in this range. But every year he pretty much outperforms his ADP just because of the lack of upside. He just you know, I mean, he Brian Reynolds his way through it. He just accumulates and does his thing, Gray. Number 68, Jose Barrios, 192 innings last year, 16-11 record, 3.60 ERA, 1.15 WHIP, 153 strikeouts. That is a 19.5% K rate. He had a 6.9% walk rate. 13-9 record is what you have projected for, with a 3.77 ERA and 1.22 WHIP, or sorry, a 1.21 WHIP, 162 strikeouts in 190 innings. He had he kind of bookended it as well. Good April, good finish to the season. Really bad right in the middle. The four-seamer, got destroyed. Sinker issues, middle of the season. But he is having a good spring training. This is a Rudy War Room guy, Gray. Is it? Are you falling for the War Room this year, or are you ignoring it?
Actually, with Jose Barrios, it's like once Joe Ryan has finally moved off of the top of the War Room, then Jose Barrios replaces him. It's like, okay, I get it, War Room. You really like Joe Ryan. I understand. And then it's like, oh, Jose Barrios. Okay, War Room. I hear you. Leave me alone with the Jose Barrios. I was just trying to find. I was texting with the Blue Jays person, and I was trying to find what they said about Jose Barrios, and I was going to share it, but I don't remember now. But it was something like I believe it was something like how's Barrios look? And I think they said he looked fine. His velocity was good. So yeah, I mean he's fine for what he is. Jose Barrios is like one of those guys that like he throws a lot of innings, so he's going to look good at the end of the day when it comes to like the player rater or the War Room, or just like how much fantasy value he's going to give at the end of the year, because like he's going to, a 3.7 ERA with in 190 innings is going to be good. It's going to be worthwhile to have that, even if there is no real strikeouts that comes with it. So yeah, I mean, he's fine. Again, like he's a fifth starter who gives you some innings.
Yeah, I mean, he's essentially Waka with more innings. Yeah, I don't have any problem with Jose Barrios. Maybe a little bit more versus, up and downs with Barrios too, as we saw last year at different times. But as you said, by the end of the year, the numbers are fine. Number 69, Shamanaya. He's dealing with oblique issues. He hasn't thrown yet. Last year, he had 181 innings, went 12-6. 3.47 ERA, 108 WHIP, 184 strikeouts, which was a just under a 25% K rate, and he had an 8.5% walk rate. You him down for 10-7 record, 3.82 ERA, 1.23 WHIP. Every few years we get good Manaya, but he's never repeated it. Gray, can we get back-to-back seasons for the first time ever?
I don't know. I want to say yes, but I don't know. That's a tough question. I will say I think because of the injury and because it's not an arm-related injury, I don't mind stashing him. If you have an IL slot where you could stash Manaya, that doesn't sound like a bad idea because if he comes back like mid-May, if you figure, like, I think he's starting to throw off a flat ground, then he has to go on a minor league assignment, so you're looking around May to mid-May. He comes back and throws roughly 140 innings, and if he can repeat last year, those will be a good 140 innings. So I don't mind the stash in the IL if you have room.
Yeah, I have a firm no stashing Shamanaya on my IL rule, so I can't get behind that, Gray.
You have a very specific rule. That should be the only rule you have. I'm sorry. That and no Bo Bichette.
No bullshit. I mean, I will draft him, Gray, if he drops to wherever I have him drop to in my rankings at this point. I keep dropping him just to make a point that the spring training doesn't really matter.
You have if he's there after Patrick Corbin, I will absolutely take Bo Bichette.
I will absolutely take him. I mean, if he's sitting around there and like Paul DeYoung is already off the board, then I guess I'll go with Bo Bichette. If that's really the decision I have to make, then so be it. But no, I've never seen Shamanaya go back-to-back seasons successfully, so I just assume it's never happening at this point in his career. So I'm just going to drop him this year, and then I'll put him on a sleeper list next year again. Number 70, Yu Darvish, 81 innings last year, 7-3 record, 3.31 ERA, 107 WHIP, 78 strikeouts. That was a 23.6% K rate. He had a 6.6% walk rate. You have him down for an 8-7 record, 3.48 ERA, 1.21 WHIP, 127 strikeouts, and 124 innings. Stop me if you've heard this, Gray. He was good when he pitched.
Yeah, I actually I feel like I have moved Yu Darvish since you wrote up the outline. So we're seeing a little bit of behind the scenes with the outlines versus what Gray's rankings actually are. I've moved Yu Darvish because of the elbow inflammation. That's fine though. Okay. Just briefly, I wouldn't draft him. I think he was a interesting pick early on in preseason drafts, but now that he has elbow inflammation, it just avoid. So yeah.
I mean, there's nothing to do here. You're just gonna wait and see what happens, and you grab him up if he comes back at some point. I wouldn't waste an IL spot necessarily on Yu Darvish. There's somebody else out there you can use that on that's better, or you'll have somebody soon enough. Next tier, Gray, number 71, Jackson Jobe. In AA last year, he had 73 innings, 4-2 record, 1.95 ERA, 109 WHIP, 81 strikeouts, which led to a 27% K rate and a 12.7% walk rate. You have him projected for an 8-8 record, 3.47 ERA, 1.29 WHIP, 122 strikeouts, and 134 innings. He is the number 2 prospect pitcher on Itch's rankings behind only Roki Sasaki. It said, at his best, Joe prepares impeccable command with incredible spin rates. I like Jackson Jobe. considerably more than you. It looks like, Gray. You're just gonna not own Jackson Jobe this year, huh?
Yeah, no, I don't think I've drafted him anywhere. I don't think I plan on it, but it's not that I don't like him. I just don't know. Like, I didn't know if he was going to break camp, but now that he has, even, I mean, I thought he might, but now that he has, I haven't really gotten more excited for him, to be honest. I mean, I don't know, his strikeouts look pretty I think he could succeed, and Detroit's a good stadium, so there's that. I do think, like, I mean, I do appreciate that everyone seems to think that he's going to be, the best rookie pitcher this year, which is, that's not nothing. I mean, I'm not being sarcastic. I think, I trust Itch. He really likes him. I think everyone thinks he's basically, this year's Paul Skeens. There won't be a this year's Paul Skeens. We'll say that. But if there were, like, he would be the guy, Jackson Jobe, that is. So I don't mind the flyer if he was there later. But I guess I am out by virtue of where I would be drafting him. I also don't love how few Ks he seems to get in major league action every time he looks, every time he gets in there. Now it's very small sample sizes and it's spring training, but he really isn't striking guys out in spring training. And you would think, like, even like Paul Skeens, it's an unfair comparison, but there's nowhere in the world Paul Skeens enters a spring training game and doesn't strike out like a ton of hitters, where with Jackson Jobe, I mean, it is spring training, but he's not striking out anyone.
Yeah, no, I mean, the strikeouts are fair. He's not really shown it at the major league level. It's just kind of a, assuming that eventually he's going to get the pitchbacks right and kind of everything will click there. We've seen Detroit has actually kind of done okay with pitchers in recent years. So we'll see what happens here. I also wouldn't be surprised if it's not a full breakout here this season for Jackson Jobe. But I think the upside of what he's capable of is not something we've seen yet at the major league level, which is, again, very limited in regards to, how many innings he's thrown against major leaguers. So yeah, I like Jobe. I'm a little more willing to draft him than it sounds like you are. Right, number 72, Nick Lodolo. Last year in 115 innings, he went 9-6, 4.76 ERA, 1.20 WHIP, 122 strikeouts. That's a 24.7% K rate, 7.5% walk rate. You're him down for a 7-7 record, 4.09 ERA, 1.27 WHIP, 144 strikeouts, and 129 innings. He was good in April, missed some time in May with a groin issue, good in June, terrible in July and August, and then didn't finish the season dealing with the finger issue. Has been good in spring training. This is like when he's healthy, Gray, he's good. Like, he's not healthy that often. And then when he's pitching through stuff, he's also bad, but they still let him pitch through stuff. So I like Nick Lodolo. I don't know if he's going to stay healthy enough to ever give us the season he's capable of.
Yeah, I feel like Nick Lodolo is a little bit, like, at this point, he's a little bit underrated because, I mean, he is essentially as good as any, like, per game, he's as good as any pitcher. It's just a matter of whether or not he stays on the mound. Now, I know, like, there's a good chance he doesn't stay on the mound. Like, I understand that there is that risk, but I mean, at a certain point, that the price is fine for, even if he's not, even if he's not going to stay on the mound for 150 innings, even if you only get 120 innings at a certain price, it's not terrible. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of like Lodolo this year. I've drafted him in a few places. I think there's some price, like, there's definitely some risk. I mean, obviously, but I think there's some potential here to get good value for where he's going. As long as you don't expect, like, 150 plus innings or something.
Yeah, no, I agree, Gray. I think Nick Lodolo actually may be a draft value in some drafts, especially more like statistic driven drafts, because you don't watch him, you're not paying attention game to game, you don't see the upside. But yeah, I mean, he was really good. Like I said, to begin the season, um, I think through his first 11 starts, he was sub 3 ERA. He had like a 12K per nine. He was really doing great, and then he just ran into the kind of the finger issue and just couldn't ever get it back together. So yeah, Nick Lodolo, potentially some upside there if he can stay healthy. Again, I have concerns about that part of it, but not his capabilities as a pitcher. Number 73, Matthew Boyd. Last year he threw under 40 innings. You're projected for a 6-5 record, 3.83 ERA, 1.24 WHIP, 98 strikeouts in 95 innings. Velocity looks fine in spring training. However, these innings pitched by season, Gray, 39.2, 71, 13 and third, 78 and two thirds, 60 and a third. In case you couldn't follow those sequences of 5 numbers, there is not one that goes over 80 there, and there's only 2 that go over 70. So not great. Like, I really, really want to think that Matthew Boyd is gonna put it together, Gray, and be a great addition. But I really can't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, he feels like the kind of the bet of like the draft bet where it's like you probably aren't going to get anything, but if you happen to luck into the random 100+ inning season of Matthew Boyd, it's probably going to be excellent. So just draft him based on the potential. And I mean, where you're getting him, he's going at roughly 330 overall ADP. So it's like at that price, like, it's you're looking at him or Danny Jansen. I mean, it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
just draft him and hopefully it'll work out for you. But it is just a bet at that point.
Yeah, and I guess I want to ask something real quick, Gray. I know we're probably already going long and everything, but you talked about Boyd's going after 300. It's kind of whatever. Grab him and take the chance. We talked about ADP earlier and kind of how these rankings work, and if we went by upside, they'd be one way. If we went by the number of innings, they'd be another. We're kind of like shoving different things in and trying to combine into a value, which ultimately ends up in the player rating and everything. But is there a point in your rankings where you just kind of throw them out and you just start like you go by feel a little bit more, or like ADP is gone at this point? Like, I'm just gonna grab whoever I feel like. Is there a point, or do you kind of go by your rankings? Because I think that's something that a lot of people drafting, get stuck in their rankings a little bit too often.
I think at the point where Matthew Boyd is on the board and you're like, I don't know if my rankings are good anymore. I think I might have messed up. I should have drafted Matthew Boyd. Instead, I took Danny Jansen. I think there's probably with ADP versus the rankings, there's I would say you're always having, you always have your rankings somewhat in the back of your mind. But if like a guy is going, roughly 2 or 3 rounds before an ADP and you really want him, then you're going to have to reach for him. And there's another, on the other hand, if a guy is going like 2 or 3 rounds later than you have him ranked, then you can wait a little bit and draft them then. So it's like it's a balancing act between like when you're drafting a guy versus ADP. For the most part, I kind of know my rankings. Like it's not like I'm an idiot savant. I mean, I am an idiot. I don't know about the savant part, but I have a good idea of what my rankings are. Like I know I like Matthew Boyd. But I know I don't like him until like, at the end of a draft. So it's like, it's like when I see him sort of appear in like the queue of like players who are up next in like, ADP, and it's like, oh, Matthew Boyd is going to get picked in the next like, 30 or 40 picks. So it's like, if I want him, I know I got to take him. And then, on the other hand, I know too, like, I know where I'm at with, like, for mentioning a guy from earlier, like Spencer Strider. I know he's going way before I have him ranked. So I know if I wanted him, I would have to reach. I won't be reaching, but I rarely reach up. I'll reach back if that sounds weird now. I rarely reach up for a guy though. If a guy is like going way before where I have him ranked, I don't usually reach for them. It's just, especially when it comes to starting pitching, there's just so many guys. Like, it's like, oh no, oh shoot, I missed on Mackenzie Gore. Oh no, like who cares? Just draft someone else. Like, yeah, like I don't care that much about like any of them, assuming I'm getting guys who I really like versus, guys I want to avoid. Like, it's like, oh no, I missed on like Seth Lugo. It's like, what? No one's ever said that in their life. Who cares? But I do like him. I mean, I do like him. I just, if I happen to miss on him, it's like, oh well, I'll just take, Zach Eflin or something.
Yeah, I guess for me, I will say I'm pretty good about following the rankings till we get to about 200 or so among pitch, like at pick 200, and then at that point, like ADP is out the window completely for me, and I'm just grabbing whoever I want. But to some extent, there's a lot of, and we've talked about this several times, like there's a lot of mix up that you can do with pitching, and I think 200 just about when that starts, like Mackenzie Gore, Eovaldi, Shane Baz. Like that's the most weird trio of people all going around 200 that you could rank in any number of ways. So just like grab what you need. Anyways, that's what I was trying to get towards. But let's keep going, Gray. Number 74, Tomoyuki Sugano. Last year in the NPB, he had 156 innings, 15-3 record, 1.67 ERA, 0.94 WHIP, 111 strikeouts. That was an 18.3% K rate, 2.6% walk rate. 2025 for you have him projected for a 8-6 record, 4.02 ERA, 109 WHIP, 107 strikeouts, and 161 innings. Not going to really give you Ks. We don't really see pitchers come from Japan and get more Ks their first season, so that's pretty much out. But could be a decent source of ratios. Might be more useful in like points leagues or in certain other styles.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm kind of curious to see how he does just like in general, because like he has such good command that if the command holds, then he can't, like, again, I think I've already said this earlier in the pod, but if the command holds, he shouldn't be that terrible. Like there should be, like, if his walk rate is anywhere close to what it was last year, it like, under a 3% walk rate. I mean, it's like, how bad could he be? I don't know. It's like, hopefully, if because command also, I mean, command fuels not only whip and ERA, guys are not on base for like, but it also fuels like, other things where it's like, if he can command his pitches that well, you would assume he's not going to throw the ball right over the plate where someone could hit a home run. So, it should control, like, it should keep his homers down. It should keep his ERA down. It should keep like all his ratios in check. So I don't mind it, for especially like there's no helium at all on his, like, he's basically free in most drafts.
He really is. He's about as free as they get in drafts for the most part. Number 75, Brian Breo. Last year had 162 innings, 14-8 record, 4.49 ERA, 1.36 WHIP, 153 strikeouts, 21.8% K rate, 9.1% walk rate. You owe him down for an 11-10 record, 3.98 ERA, 1.31 WHIP, 158 strikeouts, and 167 innings. He got the call up. He was bad in May. He was terrible in June, and then got together for a good second half. Is there another step that Bayo can take, or is he just going to kind of sit in the low to mid 4 ERA for the rest of his career, whenever he's healthy?
Yeah, he's also. I don't even know if he's healthy. I mean, I think he's battling something to do with his shoulder, but I think he's.
Yeah.
I think
He's
he's.
supposed to
I,
start the season on the L, but he's supposed to be back by the
yeah.
first or second week of April.
Right. As bad as the shoulder injury is for a pitcher, I think his is relatively minor, so I think it's okay. Yeah, I mean, I still believe in the stuff. We haven't really seen it completely, but he was. I mean, he's supposed to be an ace at some point. So I don't know. I mean, this is again like the price matters when it comes to these guys where if it's like if he's cheap enough in drafts where you can just stash him on your IL, I don't mind it. I don't expect a ton, but I think it's worth the stash.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm stashing Brian Bayo unless it's a deeper league. I just don't think he's doing enough for you to stash him and wait for you. Um, the stuff is fine. It's always been fine. There's always concerns that the fastball was a little too straight, and it seems like that's what's playing out. It feels like the fastball is just too straight, despite him being able to throw it hard, and it's just not full enough guys. That on top of a shoulder issue, and I'm out on Brian Bayou. Somebody else can have him. Number 76, Mitch Keller, 178 innings, 11-12 record, 4.25 ERA, 1.3 WHIP, 166 strikeouts, 21.5% K rate, 6.5% walk rate. You have projected for a 10-10 record, 4.04 ERA, 1.24 WHIP, 177 strikeouts, and 181 innings. Is this the new Joe Musgrove or poor man's Joe Musgrove? Just great first half and then just falls apart. It's happened 2 seasons in a row, Gray.
Yeah. I mean, I last year I wrote a sleeper post for him and he looked pretty solid for a little bit more than like 2 months and then it was like, oh.
Yeah,
Ooh.
3.46 at the All-Star break. He was doing pretty good, Gray.
Yeah, it was okay. Not bad.
Not bad. Not full
Yeah,
breakout, but not bad.
yeah. I mean, I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens. I still think there could. I still think I don't. I think for the price is really what matters here. But I think there could be something. I mean, it's possible. He did do it for. He did it for like 2.5 months. He wasn't great. He wasn't good in April, but in May and June he was excellent. So I mean, there's moments of being excellent. So he just needs to put that together for, a full season. I think it's possible. I'm not betting a ton on it, but if he's there in a draft at like, this is fantasy starter number 6 on your team. If he's there as your fantasy starter number 6, sure, why not?
Yeah, I don't mind it. And like I said, you just take him through the first half, let him go. Don't take the bad, just take the good, Keller. And maybe he can figure it out for a full season at some point. Number 77 is Tobias Myers. 138 innings last year, 9.6 record, 3 ERA, 1.17 WHIP, 127 strikeouts, 22.3% K rate, 6.3% walk rate. You are projected for a 10-9 record, 3.81 ERA, 1.15 WHIP, 133 strikeouts, and 146 innings. He had a few bad starts at the beginning of last year, but was good outside of that. Sierra FIP not necessarily buying a 3 ERA as they have him at 3.99 and 3.91. Tobias Myers, what are your thoughts here?
I was really in on him early in the draft season, but then I think he has an oblique strain, and he's going to start the year on the IL. So I guess I'm holding for now, but I don't know. Obliques, that's usually only 2 weeks to 2 years, so we'll see when he returns. I don't think there's not a ton of strikeouts here no matter what happens. I think he's probably, hopefully he's more of a ratio play, even though he does give up a ton of fly balls in not the greatest of parks. So yeah, I mean, I think I don't mind it for the price. I think if you can stash him on the IL in a deeper league, like he's not really worthwhile in a if you're stashing him, I think you're fine if you have an IL slot. He's not really worth just holding if you don't have an IL slot. I mean, there's other guys you can probably grab and stream, but yeah, I don't mind him really if he's healthy for a last starter on your team kind of guy.
Yeah, I like him as well as a kind of a deep stash if you're looking for that. Still no real timetable on his return, so that would certainly help make that a little bit easier to stomach if we knew when he was coming back. Number 78 is Bubba Chandler, 119 innings last year between Double A and Triple A. He put up a 3.08 ERA, a 102 WHIP, 30.9% K rate, and an 8.6% walk rate. You him down for an 8-10 record, 3.95 ERA, 136 WHIP, 153 strikeouts, and 138 innings. He is the number 16 prospect on Itch's prospect list, the number 4 pitcher. He's already been sent down to the minors to start the season, but I don't think there was ever a lot of hope that he was going to break camp, but still could give you some decent fantasy value down the line.
Yeah, I think he's probably I would guess he's up fairly quickly, depending on how he looks in AAA, obviously. If he's healthy and looks good in AAA, I don't see any reason why they hold him down there longer than, say, I don't know, May-ish, May, June, maybe.
Whenever they brought Skeens up last year, that kind of timeline.
Yeah. Like when they brought up Skeens last year, maybe a couple weeks after that, because Skeens was up pretty close. He was up pretty early.
He was up pretty quick, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe maybe mid-May to early June for Bubba Chandler if he's good in AAA, which I would imagine he's going to be. I like the stash in a deeper league, or if you can in a shallower league, if you have the room to maneuver, I guess you could hold them on your bench. I don't mind it. Yeah, it's fine. I think actually if he broke camp, I would be more excited for him than Jackson Jobe by a little bit. Just because the upside, I think Bubba Chandler's upside is a little bit more interesting to me than Jackson Jobe, but I mean probably close, because you would assume the Pirates aren't going to give him a ton of win potential, and his Bubba Chandler's command is a little bit less than Jobe. Bubba's command could get him into trouble. Like he might blow up at occasional. He might give you a roofie. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind the flyer though. I think he could be excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could be too down the line. Yeah, I mean, somebody definitely keep on your watch list. If you have the space, go ahead and stash him. But knowing the Pirates, I wouldn't expect him up too early, just the way they generally are. So, well, if you have the space, go ahead. I don't know if he's going to be on your roster by the time he comes back up. Number 79, Gavin Williams, 76 innings last year, 3-10 record, 4.86 ERA, 1.37 WHIP, 79 strikeouts. That's a 23.8% K rate, a 9.6% walk rate. You have him projected for a 9-8 record, 4.09 ERA, 1.35 WHIP, 124 strikeouts and 120 innings. Struggled in his first look. He's having a very nice spring training, 21 strikeouts and only 12 1/3 innings. Definitely a potential for high Ks, but also has some control issues.
Yeah, he's also having an insanely good spring training, which, I mean, we keep saying spring training doesn't matter, but if a guy's having a good spring training, then maybe you reach around, maybe you reach a round or two earlier to grab him, because, I mean, he is going late enough where, at a certain point, I think what you were getting at earlier, at a certain point, it doesn't really matter like where you're grabbing a guy. If you're grabbing him at 200 overall or 275 overall. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's it's irrelevant. It's like once you get into the first week of the season, you don't even remember what round you drafted people anymore, unless it's like the top 3 rounds. But Gavin Williams, yeah, I mean, he looks excellent in the spring, so I'd grab him for that alone.
Yeah, and I mean, while we say it's spring training, it doesn't really matter. One thing I do kind of look at in spring training is K rate, just to see what people are doing. And it is one of the things that will stabilize the fastest, at least. It's not going to stabilize in spring training to a point we can really use it. But if we just sort by last year's spring training strikeouts, Gray, you stopped me when somebody was bad, okay? Hunter Green, Ken Maeda. Okay, maybe he was bad. Spencer Strider. Okay. 1, 2, and 3. We're just gonna ignore those. Logan Webb, Dylan Cease, Garrett Crochet, Chris Sale, Cole Reagans, Logan Gilbert, Tariq Skubal, Jack Flaherty, Tyler McGill, Reed Detmers is I think where we get to where it starts sucking. But like the top 12, Maeda's bad, Strider got hurt. The other 10 were really good. And if you're looking at this list, like there's some other breakouts that you can identify from this. Bailey Ober's on this list. Nick Pavetta's on this list, but Nick Pavetta's usually on this list. Mackenzie Gore was on this list. Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Brady Singer, Ryan Nelson. Like there's, again, not putting a ton of information into spring training or a ton of faith in the spring training, but I'm not saying it's completely useless either, Gray. That's all I was trying to get at. Now that I've wasted even more time on this incredibly long podcast, let's move on to number 80, Nick Martinez, 142 innings, 10-7 record, 3.10 ERA, 103 WHIP, 116 strikeouts. That was a 20.4% K rate and a 3.2% walk rate. You have him down for an 8-10 record, a 3.51 ERA, 109 WHIP, 144 strikeouts, and 171 innings. He had some time as a starter, some as a reliever. He was normal. His numbers were better as a reliever than as a starter, but they were still fine as a starter. 3.84 ERA, 1.12 WHIP, and a 19% K rate.
Yeah, he's actually, his Ks are up in spring training too. But I mean, he might be Kenta Maeda versus everyone else you mentioned. So I don't know. It's hard to know which guys are going to be terrible from that list. I'd say Nick Martinez is really. I think he's really more of a hopefully he wasn't this last year necessarily, but he was a ground ball pitcher prior to last year. Last year he didn't do the ground ball thing as much, but his ratios have been good for like 3 years now. So I don't trust him 100% because I don't love Cincy. I don't love the park for pitching, but he was decent last year. Besides not being a high strikeout guy in spring training.
All right, Craig. Number 81, Clark Schmidt, 85 innings last year, 5.5 record, 2.85 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 93 strikeouts, 26.3% K rate, 8.5% walk rate. Young projected for an 8.5 record, 3.47 ERA, 1.22 WHIP, in 119 strikeouts and 117 innings. He is dealing with some shoulder soreness in spring training. He will start on the IL. Or actually, he may start on the IL. They haven't decided yet. He was good in his 85 innings last year, Gray. Do you expect that to continue or not? Or is he down here because of the injury? What's your thoughts on Clark Schmidt?
I think he's a good IL stash that, I think if he's healthy, I was looking to draft him everywhere. I thought if he was healthy, I was looking at a guy who's going to be the Louis Heel of the breakouts this year for the Yankees. Like the Yankees, Michael, I consider Michael King a success story for the Yankees pitching staff, even though he didn't really do it until he was on San Diego. I think Louis Heel was great last year. I think Clark Schmidt could have been Will Warren, I think, is interesting early on. The Clark Schmidt, I think, is the shoulder is really what it's going to come down to. But I like the IL stash for him just to see what he looks like when he comes back, because, as scary as a shoulder thing is for a pitcher, his does sound minor. So, try it, grab him, see what happens.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I like the Will Warren shout out as well. He's on that list of strikeout leaders in spring training, by the way. Number 82, David Peterson, 121 innings last year, 10-3 record, 2.90 ERA, 1.29 WHIP, 101 strikeouts, 19.8% K rate. What are your thoughts here, Gray?
He's actually really a difficult person to pin down, because coming off of 2023, coming off of 2022, I really liked him. I wrote a sleeper post. I thought he was on the verge of a breakout. He looked really good. His peripherals looked really good. Then 2023 was a huge step back for ERA, but his peripherals still looked good. And then last year was a huge step forward for his ERA, but his peripherals look terrible. So I really don't know what to expect here. I don't mind the flyer because it is so late in the game that I feel like if you're looking at David Peterson for a fantasy 6 or 7 and he's going at 320 overall, I don't mind that flyer at all. I just don't know what you're getting. I really have no idea. And his spring training numbers are not illuminating in any way either. He's not striking out anyone, he's walking guys, but who knows with that. But yeah, I think he could be good. I don't know if we're going to see that though.
Yeah, I mean, I like David Peterson. I think he's kind of a solid ratios guy that you can get super late in your drafts. The Ks aren't going to be there. I don't really expect that to ever come around. But he used more sinkers than four seamers, less sliders, so it kind of changed his pitch mix last year, and it gave good results. It looks like he also kind of went through a pitch change, which might have been what you saw in the numbers. It was either in 23 or maybe between the 23 and 24 season, and the movement has changed on pretty much every pitch other than his crappy curveball that he barely throws. And so I actually think there's something here on David Peterson where he's made adjustments to become a better pitcher. So yeah, I like David Peterson as a no strikeouts, good ratios type that you can get very, very late. Number 83, Drew Rasmussen, 28 innings last year, 44 innings in the year before. You have project for an 8-7 record, 3.46 ERA, 107 WHIP, 122 innings and 122 strikeouts and 120 innings. Coming back from internal brace surgery after being 2 Tommy Johns in. I mean, he's been really good when he's healthy, Gray, but I don't know how you can trust Drew Rasmussen to do anything, really.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you say he's been really good, that might even be underselling him. I mean, he has been
phenomenal.
Yeah, phenomenal. Like an under 3 ERA for his career in 310 and 2/3 innings. I mean, he's been excellent. He's basically an ace if he can throw 140 plus innings, but he's never going to do that. I don't know if he's ever getting there. I would hope if he can get to 120 innings, you're getting great value for his draft spot for where his ADP is. If you can get him, if you can get 120 innings, then it's going to be an amazing 120 innings. Realistically, you might only get 70 innings maybe, but I like him. I like the flyer because it's you're just betting on him staying on the field. It's okay, there's worse things to bet on. It's not like he has to, fix something or his command is bad or there's no problems with his pitching. It's just the lack of.
Yeah, he doesn't have an elbow. That's the problem, Greg.
Yeah, well, there's that.
There's that whole thing. Speaking of somebody who may not have an elbow, Dustin May, 48 innings last year, 2.63 ERA, 0.94 WHIP, 18.2% K rate. 8.6% walk rate. You don't project for a 7.4 record, 3.57 ERA, 1.14 WHIP, 88 strikeouts in 97 innings. He is in the rotation to start the season. Nobody knows what happens with the Dodgers rotation as we get down the line. He's had a TJ. He had a TJ revision, which I think is just another TJ, honestly. He had an esophagus tear last year. That's not great either. Velocity down a little bit in spring training. Used to sit 97, 98. He's down to 95. It is spring training, not the end of the world, but what are your thoughts on Dustin May?
I think he's probably similar to Rasmussen in that, like, he should be good as long as he's pitching. You just don't know how long he's going to be pitching for. I'd be like, if you got 120 innings from him, I think you should be more than happy. In reality, probably less than 100. But if you get less than 100 in most leagues, if you get 90 good innings from him in most leagues, like, he gets shut down or, they fake an IL stint for him, you just move on to another pitcher. Like it's not a hard, it's not difficult in most leagues. So I don't mind like drafting him and then, just assuming you're going to have to move on at some point because, he's probably not going to be pitching for more than 100 innings or so.
Yeah, I think that's the way to approach it. Just don't expect a whole lot of innings. I will say on Rasmussen versus May, like May's strikeouts have been down last couple seasons, so I don't know if the strikeouts are going to return or not. That's kind of, I think, coupled with the velocity. So we'll see if both of those things can return or if May's, 95 is nothing to scoff at, but it's not 98.
Right.
All right, Greg, we've covered 40-ish guys, 45 guys, I think here. How about some guys left in your rankings that you want to point out that you've liked grabbing?
Okay, so there's a couple guys who aren't even in my rankings. So Landon Rupp, Giants starter, who I think he actually, just as we're recording this, he just won the 5th starter job for the Giants. He's been incredible in spring training.
On the strikeout list.
What?
He's on the spring training strikeout list.
Yeah. Him, right in front of Kenta Maeda. Landon Rupp is he's been excellent for command in spring training. That hasn't always been the case though in his game. But if he's unlocked something where he's able to command his pitches, because supposedly that was always in his game according to the scouting report. But there was moments like in the minors where he looked really lost. Maybe he's figured out something. His mechanics maybe were off and he's figured that out. I don't know what it is, but he looks incredibly good. So I like the Landon Rupp flyer. Another guy who has already been named, I want to say the 5th starter for the Mets, but I don't know if they have a 5th starter. Maybe they do in Griffin Canning. But I was going to say Tyler McGill. I mentioned him earlier that he gets people excited, maybe a little bit more so than his numbers suggest, because in his career it's like a 4.6 ERA guy. And so it's like, what are people excited about? But he does have really good stuff. So maybe he can unlock something. You never know. For the price, if the price is good, then go for it. And also, I mentioned Will Warren earlier. Again, he's had moments in the past and in the minors and stuff, and he's looked really good in spring training. So if there's a possibility for him to actually stick in the Yankees rotation, he's gonna have to basically do what Louis Heel did last year. He's gonna have to not only break out, but he's gonna have to be unremovable from the rotation, because otherwise Clark Schmidt returns, Will Warren's gonna be gone or something. The Yankees just don't stick with young pitchers as much as they should. Actually, going back to the Mets real quick, Clay Holmes has looked good in spring training. I think there might be something there for a reliever jumping to a starter, like we were talking about a lot on this podcast with Seth Lugo. He was a reliever at one point and then a starter. So yeah, that could happen. I kind of like I want to see what Nestor Cortez does with Milwaukee, because of Milwaukee is really good with pitchers too. So I'd like to see what happens there. And if you're really late and you're looking for a potential flyer with Jake Leiter, I think his command is still wonky. I don't know if I fully trust the command, but if he can figure out his command, like, the stuff is undeniable. So I like Jack Leiter for a really late flyer.
Yeah, I don't mind any of those calls, Gray. I think you stole a couple from what I was going to throw out there, so I'll throw a couple other ones. Brady Singer, I've always been a Brady Singer fan. Heavy ground ball pitcher. He struggled at the end of the season, but the numbers were really pretty good until then. You already mentioned Clay Holmes. Jose Soriano has looked really good this spring. He's supposedly picked up a couple of ticks on the his velocity, so somebody to look out for there. Somebody to put on your watch list just for down the road. I don't think it's worth drafting him because I don't even know if he's going to pitch this season, but somebody I want to mention because I'm really excited to see him back in Major League Baseball at some point, and that is Andrew Painter. He was phenomenal, if you don't recall him, and then blew out his arm. Max Scherzer is buried in Gray's rankings. I actually like Max Scherzer. Seems like everything's okay with the thumb, and he's ready to go for the season, and he actually looked pretty good in the spring training. So if you're looking late, I think Max Scherzer could be okay, and I think there's a couple of just kind of innings eaters types that are getting ignored at the back in the draft, like these are war room favorites for years. That would be like Eduardo Rodriguez, Marcus Stroman types. They're not going to be great. I know they were bad last year, but I also don't necessarily think that they're on the end of their career, although that's why they're being drafted at the back end here. So some guys you can look at. Oh, Jeff Springs, as we're talking about Tampa Bay guys who have blown out their arms and we're not sure what they're going to give us. Jeff Springs is on that list, and then we haven't talked about him yet. So he's as good as just about any of those other guys we talked about from Tampa Bay without elbows as well. That's a lot of stuff, Gray. We covered a lot of pitchers. I've got your comments from YouTube and everywhere. We've already talked about potentially starting this earlier next year. But yeah, we covered pitchers, Gray. There's so many of them. I feel like we were reading the same stats for like half this show, if not longer. And it's just like, hey, you can find sub 4 in 115 whip all over the place, guys. It's all over. All right. If you have any questions, you can find us on Twitter. I'm at Razzbeaton. Gray is at Razzball. At Razzball.com or YouTube.com/Razzball Fantasy. You can leave comments there as well. It is opening day week, so happy celebration, Gray. It's time.
Yay!
Time. We're ready. Woohoo! Let's go.